What every plumber needs to know about slab leak detection. I'm gonna teach you how to make more money by doing slab leak detection. I'm gonna show you the things you need to know and the equipment you need to know to do the job right. So what is slab leak detection and what are the symptoms? What causes them? Well, it may be a high water bill. It may be water coming up in the floor. There can be a lot of different things pointing to a slab leak. But as a plumber, do you just walk in and look at a water puddle on the floor and say, hey, we know we've got a leak? Well, I've got to tell you, I've seen jobs that it rained so much that the ground was saturated and there was a crack in the floor and that's where water came up. A plumber literally made a hole in the floor, then starts doing testing and says, oh wait, you don't even have a leak. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how to find out if there is a leak, where is the leak, and what equipment do you need to find it properly. But as a plumber, when we go out, the very first thing we need to do is we need to look at the meter. Is the meter turning? Now, even these new advanced digital meters, I've proven some of them wrong. Just because a meter is not turning doesn't mean there's not a leak in the house. It means it's not being detected. But when we put a gauge on a house and turn off the meter for, say, 15 minutes, if that pressure drops at all, we know there's a leak. Now, I hate to have to start off that way, but let me tell you a story. I'm in a networking group. I'm in Master Networks. And one of my former presidents called me one day and says, look, my son is having a problem with a plumber and we want to get your advice. This plumber had come into the house, told them that they had a leak, started cutting holes at every manifold. Now, the homeowner's not there. He left his father-in-law there to deal with the plumber while he was at the hospital working on getting his wife and new baby home. After a while, the father-in-law says, look, this plumber doesn't act like he knows really what's going on. So they told him to leave.
You're fired!
The next day they called another plumber to the house. The other plumber came out and apparently did things the right way. He looked at the meter, he put a gauge on it, he shut the meter, he turned it back on and said, look, you don't have a leak. Well, it's funny because the plumber the day before had told him it's gonna cost you $60,000 to replace all the piping under your house and do this job properly.
Your bill, sir.
What? Well, this can't possibly be correct.
So what I want to tell you is the right way to do it. First of all, show up at a house, check the meter. Does it turn? Now, like I said, it may turn, it may not turn, but I always follow up with a gauge. Put a gauge on at the house, put it at the valve box, put it on a hose bib. If the vacuum breaker will allow you, turn off the meter, wait 15 minutes, turn it back on. Did the pressure drop during that 15 minutes? If it did, how much did it drop? And document it. You should, as a plumber, have a form. We did a test on the sewer. We did a test on the water. This is how much it dropped and when. Why? Well, you don't want to be that guy that shows up and says, hey, y'all got a leak. I need 60 grand to fix it. And they're like, well, did it really leak? Well, if you can show your documentation to another plumber, they can do the same test you did and say, hey, look, this guy's right. It dropped 15 pounds in 12 minutes. We know that there's a leak here. Guys, cover yourself. I'm just saying. So I teach my guys, start at the meter, then go to the valve box at the house. If you hear anything, and we'll get into the equipment here in just a minute, you want to go to the yard and listen to the double check because you want to be able to isolate the irrigation system from the house just to make sure that the leak really is on the plumbing system. Now, one cool thing about my equipment, I've got an attachment for a cell phone, I have an attachment for a GoPro, and I can plug in microphones that split off to my headphones so that whenever I listen to equipment, I can record it through my phone or my GoPro. So the same noise I'm hearing, I'm recording. So when I show it to the customer, it's like, look, this is why I said you had a leak. But you can isolate a house into 4 different systems. You've got the yard or the irrigation system. You've got the house, hot and cold. You can isolate that 4 different ways. If you're looking for a needle in a haystack, wouldn't it be nice to take out 1/4 of that haystack and say, hey, look, we know it's here. Now just look here. So what is a slab leak? A slab leak can be on the drainage system or the water line. Whether you've got copper or PEX, there could be a leak on it. If it's on cast iron, if people have been putting drain cleaner down it for years and it's eaten away the inside of the cast iron pipe. If you learn the right way to do leak detection, the way I'm talking about it with you today, you can make a lot more money. Now, a lot of companies are afraid to do leak detection, but to be honest, if you learn to do it the right way, it can put more money in your bank account. And if you're a homeowner, you want to make sure that whoever's coming out to do your leak detection has been trained the right way. Did they go to a training? Do they get certified? Or did they just get online, buy a bunch of equipment, and figure out how to use it? Well, that's kind of how I started, but once I learned, then I started going to the professionals that made it and said, teach me how to use your system better than anybody else. That's how I became the Leak Pro. Now, the equipment that we go to first is always Leak Pro. The reason being, I can literally listen to the meter, I can listen to the valve box, I can listen to the irrigation system, I can listen to every different zone valve on it. When I plug in the headphones and I press the button and it's good to go, trust me, I know if I'm hearing something or not. Whenever you're out listening, you put the tip of it on the valve, you put it on the irrigation system, you put it on whatever you're listening to, and see that trigger right there? You literally squeeze that trigger, that makes the microphone come alive and transmit to your headphone. It goes through the circuit board. Look, it's all magic in here. This is where the Wizard of Oz lives. But when you press this, the sound comes from here, through the circuit board, through the wire, all the way to your headphones, and when you're on a leak, you know it. And one thing I tell people is, look, don't just sit here, press the button, and listen to it for a minute. You're listening for anything in the world to change. To be honest, if you put this on a valve, you press that button and you've got the headphones on, you're gonna hear it and you're gonna hear it immediately. So don't spend a lot of time just standing there listening. Put it on, get it where you want it, press the button. You wanna be careful not to move it around. If you put it in a spot that it can slip and slide, if you've got that button pressed, you're gonna hear it. So be very careful. Now, if you can isolate the systems and determine exactly where it is, if you close the valve box and the meter keeps turning, that tells you it's in the yard. If you turn the valve box and it stops, that tells you it's in the house. Well, then leave that valve open, go in the house, shut the valve at the water heater. If it stops, it's on the hot. If it doesn't, it's on the cold. That's pretty easy to figure out. Now, once you know what system it's on, then you go through the house, and you may want to document this, but then you go in, you want to put it literally on the angle stop, put it right where you want to hear it. Get ready, get quiet, get still, press the button for just a couple of seconds. If it's leaking, you're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear it scream. So that is step one. Now you come in, you locate that line. Now you do the exact same thing as I just did, but you go through and listen to the floor. Put it on the concrete, press the button. What do you hear? If you've marked that line, say it runs right down the middle of this table from here to here, I go about every 6 inches, right on the line. Move 6 inches, do it again. Once I think that I've got a spot that I hear it the loudest, I want to induce air into the system because now I'm listening for a bubbling noise. The reason you want to hire a trained professional to do this, most people don't even know where to listen. Most people don't understand the plumbing system. Most plumbers have everything they need to lay out where the line is, where it starts, where it ends, and what they've got to do to hear it. Now, what's going to help you make money at this? Systems and processes. You want to make sure that every time you walk up to a house, you're looking at that meter, you're putting a gauge on it, you're checking the water system to see if there's a leak. So those are your systems and processes. Everything you go through to make sure you do things right every single day. The other thing is getting the right equipment. But if you do things like that, you're going to get your leak every time and you're going to make more money. I'm Roger Wakefield, Lead AP, helping you make more money in the trades.